Good day, friends. I'm back with you for another round of storytelling. Today we'll be diving into two scary tales about Aswangs. So sit back and relax and let's get started. The sun is setting, casting long shadows through the dense foliage of the ancient woods that surrounded the remote village in Iloilo, Philippines. Martin, a young man in his 20s, had embarked on a journey to visit his grandfather's house, nestled in the heart of this eerie wilderness. He had heard tales of the eerie Aswang clan that supposedly inhabited these woods, but he dismissed them as superstitious stories meant to scare children. As he ventured deeper into the forest, the darkness crept in faster than he had anticipated. The trees seemed to close in on him, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. A shiver ran down his spine, and he quickened his pace, eager to reach the safety of his grandfather's home. The only source of light was the pale glow of the full moon above, barely penetrating the thick canopy. Martin's heart pounded with each step, and the rustling leaves and distant hoots of owls amplified his unease. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Suddenly, an eerie, guttural sound echoed through the forest. Martin froze in his tracks, his breath catching in his throat. He strained his ears, trying to identify the source of the haunting noise. It came again, closer this time, a mournful wail that sent chills down his spine. As he continued onward, he noticed movement in the shadows. Glowing red eyes flickered amidst the trees, following his every move. Panic surged within him, but he couldn't turn back now. He was too deep into the forest. The creatures emerged from the darkness, their grotesque forms slowly taking shape. They were Aswangs, the monstrous creatures of local legend. With long, sinewy limbs, sharp claws, and leathery wings, they exuded an aura of malevolence. Martin's heart raced as he realized the stories were true, and he had walked right into their territory. With his heart pounding in his chest, Martin forced himself to keep moving forward. He knew his grandfather's house couldn't be far now. The Aswangs followed him, their eerie calls growing louder and more insistent. It was as though they were toying with him, prolonging his torment. Finally, through the darkness, Martin saw a faint glimmer of light. He stumbled toward it, hope surging within him. As he emerged from the woods, he found himself standing before a small, weathered hut. It was his grandfather's house. Relief washed over him as he pounded on the door.
Lolo! Lolo!
He cried, hoping his grandfather would hear him and let him in. The door creaked open, revealing an old man with a grizzled beard and wise eyes. It was his grandfather, but something was different about him. His presence seemed otherworldly, and a strange, unearthly aura surrounded him.
Lolo!
"You won't believe what I saw in the woods," Martin exclaimed, panting heavily. His grandfather smiled cryptically. "I know, my boy. I've been waiting for you." Martin stepped inside the dimly lit hut, glancing around nervously. The walls were adorned with strange symbols and relics, and the air was thick with an otherworldly energy. "Sit, Martin," his grandfather said, motioning to a wooden stool. "I have much to tell you." As Martin settled into the stool, his grandfather began to recount the family's dark secret. "We are Aswangs, Martin, just like the creatures in the woods. But not all Aswangs are evil. Some, like me, have chosen to protect our own." Martin's eyes widened in disbelief. "You're an Aswang?" "No shit." His grandfather nodded. "Yes, but I love you, my grandson, and I would never harm you. That's why I brought you here tonight, to protect you from the others." Outside, the Aswangs continued their eerie calls, growing more insistent. Martin's fear was palpable, but he couldn't deny the bond he felt with his grandfather. "Why do I feel like they want something from me?" Martin asked, his voice trembling. His grandfather's gaze was filled with sorrow. "It's because you carry our blood, Martin. They want to claim you as one of their own." Martin's mind raced as he processed the revelation. He had always thought of himself as a regular human, but now he was faced with a horrifying truth about his family's legacy. The Aswangs outside grew bolder, their snarls and howls echoing through the night. Martin's grandfather stood, his eyes blazing with determination. "We must protect you," he said. With a wave of his hand, the symbols on the walls began to glow, casting a protective barrier around the hut. The Aswangs screeched in frustration, unable to breach the mystical barrier. As the night wore on, Martin and his grandfather talked about their family's history, their role as protectors, and the ancient rituals they performed to keep the evil Aswangs at bay. Martin realized that his grandfather had always been there, silently guarding him from the shadows. Dawn broke, and the Aswangs, defeated and vanquished by the first light of day, retreated into the depths of the forest. Martin knew he would carry this secret with him for the rest of his life, but he also knew that he had a guardian in his grandfather, a loving Aswang who would stop at nothing to keep him safe. Get ready for a tale of newlyweds in search of a fresh start. They ventured to a remote Philippine province, yearning for a new life, only to stumble upon an age-old mythological evil that emerges under the cloak of night. Brace yourselves for a journey into the heart of darkness as their dreams collide with the chilling reality of ancient malevolent creatures. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the province of Capiz. It had been a long journey for Miguel and Maria, a newlywed couple who had come to this remote village to start their life together. The province was Miguel's hometown, a place where he had spent his childhood and adolescence. Maria, 2 months pregnant, held Miguel's hand tightly as they stood in front of a quaint, rustic house nestled amidst the swaying coconut trees. It was the home of Miguel's uncle, the only relative they had in the village. They had decided to stay there while they looked for job opportunities and a place of their own. Miguel had heard the rumors that circulated in the village about Aswangs, malevolent creatures that lurked in the darkness. It was a superstition he had grown up with, stories told around campfires to scare children into obedience. He didn't put much stock in such tales, but there was an uneasiness in the pit of his stomach as they entered the dimly lit house. Tito Pedro, Miguel's uncle, greeted them warmly. He noticed Maria's pregnancy and his face grew somber. "You must be careful," he warned them, his voice filled with concern. "The Aswangs are not to be trifled with, especially when there's a child on the way." Miguel nodded, but Maria, who was new to these superstitions, looked puzzled. "Aswangs, Tito? Are they real?" Tito Pedro hesitated for a moment before replying. "Some say they are, some say they aren't, but it's best not to tempt fate. Keep your doors locked and your windows shut at night, and never wander into the woods after dark." The couple thanked Tito Pedro for his advice and assured him they would be cautious. They spent the first few days exploring the village, getting to know the friendly locals, and sampling the delicious cuisine that the province was known for. However, they couldn't help but notice the curious glances they received from the villagers. It was as if they were outsiders, and some of the older folks muttered in hushed tones as they passed by. Miguel overheard a group of men talking near the village well one day. "Did you see that couple who moved into Pedro's house?" One man whispered to another. "Yes, they're newcomers." Miguel, I think his name is, used to live here as a child, the other replied. I heard they're expecting a child, the first man said, shaking his head. They should be careful, especially with Aswangs around. The other men nodded in agreement, and Miguel couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. It seemed that the villagers took the Aswang legend seriously, and their warnings were not to be dismissed lightly. As days turned into nights, Miguel and Maria began to experience strange occurrences. It started with the sound of distant, mournful wails in the dead of night. At first, they thought it was just the wind, but the cries grew closer and more unsettling with each passing night. One evening, as they sat together on the porch, they saw a strange old man standing at the edge of the yard. He was thin and haggard, his eyes sunken and vacant. He stared at Maria with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine. "Who is that man, Miguel?" Maria asked in a hushed tone, gripping her husband's arm. Miguel squinted at the figure in the moonlight. "I don't know, Maria. I've never seen him before. Maybe he's just lost." But the old man's presence continued to unsettle them. He appeared night after night, always staring at Maria, his gaze never wavering. They tried to ask the villagers about him, but no one seemed to know who he was or where he came from. One night, as the eerie cries of unseen creatures echoed in the distance, Miguel and Maria decided to confront the old man. They approached him cautiously, their hearts pounding with fear. "Excuse me, sir," Miguel began, his voice trembling slightly. "We've noticed you've been watching us. Is there something you need?" The old man remained silent for a moment, and then he spoke in a raspy voice. "Beware the shadows, young ones. They hunger for the unborn." Maria gasped, clutching her belly protectively. "What do you mean?" she asked, her eyes wide with fear. The old man's lips curled into a chilling smile. "The Aswangs are drawn to the scent of a pregnant woman. They will stop at nothing to satisfy their craving." Miguel and Maria hurried back to the safety of their uncle's house, their minds filled with dread. The old man's words haunted them, and they couldn't escape the feeling that they were being watched, not only by him but by unseen eyes in the darkness. As the days passed, the Aswangs grew bolder. They would hear eerie footsteps outside their window at night, and sometimes the sound of wings flapping in the distance. Miguel reinforced the locks on the doors and windows, and they kept a small lantern burning through the night to ward off the shadows. One evening, as the moon hung low in the sky, they heard a blood-curdling scream coming from the village. They rushed outside, their hearts pounding, and saw a group of villagers gathered around a small hut. "What happened?" Miguel asked a neighbor, his voice trembling. The neighbor looked pale and frightened. "It's Anita, the midwife. She was attending to a pregnant woman, and they say an Aswang attacked them. The woman's baby. It's gone." Miguel felt a chill run down his spine as he looked at Maria, his wife, who was carrying their child. They realized that they were not safe, and the Aswangs were real, not just figments of superstition. That night, they decided they couldn't stay any longer. They packed their few belongings and bid farewell to Tito Pedro, who understood their decision. He gave them a small talisman, a protective charm, and urged them to seek refuge in a neighboring town. As they left the village of Capiz behind, Miguel and Maria couldn't help but wonder about the strange old man who had warned them. Was he a guardian spirit trying to protect them from the malevolent Aswangs, or was he something else entirely? One thing was certain, They had learned to respect the superstitions of the place and to trust their instincts when it came to matters of the supernatural. As they ventured into the unknown, their hearts filled with hope for the safe arrival of their child, and the memory of their time in the haunted village of Capiz would forever remain etched in their minds as a tale of caution and survival. Thank you for joining and listening. I hope you like my story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your fellow scary story lovers. For more scary tales like this, make sure to subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support keeps the darkness alive here. And if you have your own terrifying experiences or spooky stories to share, don't hesitate to leave a comment down below. I love hearing from you and exchanging shivers down our spines. Until next time, stay brave, stay curious, and stay scared.